Hello, and welcome to the Mountain Mystic Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Hemphill, and I'm so happy to be here with you today to share this conversation and to bring you practice focused on today's theme, that is grounding. Grounding, my favorite thing to talk about, my favorite thing to bring you practice for, whether it's some of the super simple practices that you can do with just a single breath, or those deeper meditation journey style practices that take us deep into grounding. Grounding being that practice, that state that has everything to do with the felt experience of being supported, of being connected into self, finding these qualities within self, but also into earth herself. Grounding having these qualities of presence, being present, embodied, again, connected in, supported, often also having to do with safety, can also have much to do with nourishment. So if being present, more connected into self and connected into all of earth, feeling more deeply held, safe, nourished, otherwise supported, if these sort of experiences sound like something you need more of in your life, this episode is for you today. And just taking a moment here, we'll dive much deeper into this in the upcoming episode, but just want to take a moment here to speak to why. Like, why is this so important? And I know you have a good level of understanding of why this is important, right? It's it's not often something that needs a depth of explanation to gain some sort of idea. Like, yes, we have to feel that ground beneath our feet. We have to know ourselves here and present to some degree. We have to feel supported. We have to feel nourished, right? These are kind of these innate human qualities, experiences that we just need some sort of level of to be able to live and breathe and be in this world, right? But with this episode, I want to go much deeper, and I want to take us into the space, the heart, or maybe I should say the festering root system of what I believe is truly at the core of what is wrong in this world. You know, I talk all the time, right, about we live in this crazy mess of things on planet Earth, and there's all these problems, all these challenges, all these terrible things that are alive in our world. And we can speak to why that is, and it would take many lifetimes to speak to why it is. But if we sort of break it all down and get to the core of what it is, like, why do we live in the world that we live in? One of the spaces that I get to is how deeply ungrounded we are. Humanity as a whole, and particularly us over here in the Western world, we are deeply ungrounded. We are disconnected from self. We are disconnected from that felt present connection with self, with our own bodies, with the own physical nature of who we are. And at the same time, we are disconnected from earth. We are disconnected from the ground beneath our feet, from that felt experience of being embodied in connection to this earth we live on that separates us from the earth, along with all of life expressing on this planet. Right? So this disconnection from self, from the physical selves that we are, disconnected from the physical world we are all part of. And speaking to it in this way is a very sort of similar way of speaking to ungrounding. We are ungrounded, right? The ground being the physical earth, the physical nature of what exists. Again, as self, we can speak to grounding, speaking just to what is within self. And we can expand beyond that, deepen beyond that into the ground beneath our feet. So feeling into this, right? Feeling into this. As always, I want this to be experiential, and we are going to jump into a more focused practice here in a minute. But as I'm speaking to things, the invitation is to feel into it. So when I speak to grounding in your body, allowing yourself to feel into this. How do you find grounding? How do you feel grounding? How do you know that you are grounded in relationship to your body? So for me, it's a slower breath, and my attention drops down, right? We live so much of our lives up in our heads, kind of caught up in this thing and that thing and that thing. So when we speak to grounding, what immediately happens for me in my body is a slowing of my breath, a deepening of my breath, as my consciousness drops, maybe down into my chest, my belly, all the way down into my root, maybe all the way down into my legs. The specifics here aren't so important, but it's a dropping down into self, into your physical body. So that's self. What if we want to talk about grounding and connection to earth? Where do you go? Now, just as we start to very simply speak to it, grounding and connection to earth. For me, I feel my feet on the floor, my seat in the chair, but I feel my body in connection to the surface holding me. So feeling that physical surface, that solid surface, but also a soft surface right now holding me. And then often dropping down even further, down into the dirt, the rocks, the root, the soil, the earth down beneath me. Sometimes when I, bring the need for grounding to mind, I'll find something in my environment. For example, I have this big, beautiful ponderosa outside my window. It lives in my front yard and has such a deep, powerful holding energy. And right now I can look out my window, just feeling into this ponderosa. I can be guided into her roots and feeling down into those roots, down deeply grounded down into the earth. And that right there brings me a sense of grounding. So what we're doing here, maybe you're starting to pick up on this, is that, there's no one way to ground, right? I often use this word playground. Like there's a playground of experience for all these different ways that we can find grounding. And it's not that there's a right way to do it, although other people might tell you there are right and wrong ways to do it. There's no right way to do it. Yes, there are practices that are more effective than others. And I will say there are probably wrong ways to do it. And in this episode, I'll speak to what I've learned that are ways that are maybe better than others to care for not only yourself, but also the other aspects of this world that you are inviting in to help you ground. But again, really a whole playground of experience here for you to learn, for you to play with. What helps you ground? What helps you ground? And we're going to do a more focused practice here. And then after that, I'm going to tell you a story about my own wild way that I really found my way to grounding in a time where I was the most ungrounded I've ever been, completely caught up in a fiery tornado, a hellish landscape that had me completely swept away from not only, the physical nature of my life, right? All the the career, the house, the relationship, that everything that was swept away, but also just the feeling in my body, right? Like the knowing, the feeling, the experience of being completely ungrounded, being caught up again in that more fiery, airy, sort of heady qualities that so much of us know so well. Maybe you know it as anxiety, whatever words we want to put to that like fiery, airy quality that keeps us up in our heads in chaos, disconnects us from the ability to be present, centered, focused in reality. So I'll tell you that story about me, and then we'll dive deeper in and we'll see where this episode takes us. So moving into some practice now. And feel free to do this practice in whatever way serves you today. Maybe you're listening to this podcast, but while you're doing other things, if that's the case, just really be present to self. Like what would serve to do this practice in particular is one that's going to be a little bit easier. And it's one that's really geared towards you can tap into grounding. And I, really strongly encourage you to tap into grounding no matter what you're doing. So you can stop what you're doing, really bring your full attention to this practice now. You can try it out while you're doing the dishes or whatever else you're doing, but super simple. And again, a practice that really is meant to help you find your grounding no matter what you're doing, because no matter what you're doing, I want you to feel grounded. I want you to feel supported. I want you to feel connected in. So very simple here. Finding your feet on the floor, your seat in the chair, connecting into the physical surface that's holding you here in this moment. So if you're standing up, if you're walking around, that might be your feet. If you're seated, it might be your sits bones. For me, I'm here cross-legged on the floor recording this. So it's my sits bones, it's my legs, it's my feet. I can actually place my hands down on the ground beneath me. But it's bringing your attention to that physical connection that grounds our physical bodies down onto the earth beneath us, the surface beneath us. So that physical surface beneath you and feeling it. So as you feel it, right, it's a dropping down out of your head and feeling into it. It's a sensory experience. And as you're doing this, maybe you already start to do this, but it's a deepening of your breath, a slowing down of your breath. And again, it might just start to happen naturally as we sort of tune into this state of grounding. Maybe simply by bringing your attention down to the ground, the earth, your body, your breath starts to slow. As we move out of the realm of the head and all the chaos that this world keeps us caught up in, as we move closer to ground, maybe your breath automatically starts to slow. But whether or not it does, bringing this conscious attention to your breath, a slowing down, even if it's just slightly, of your breath, deeper, fuller breaths as you continue to bring your attention down out of your head. And I'm going to keep cueing this because we've been programmed so strongly to live life up in our heads. So no matter how often we do these sort of depths, grounding, embodied meditations, we have this tendency to jump right back up into our heads. So this continued cueing to drop down out of your head. Once again, feel down into that ground, that surface holding you, breathing deeper into self. Feeling the expansion of your ribs as you inhale. Maybe you feel even deeper down into the expansion of your abdomen. Can you breathe deeply all the way down into your root, all the way down into that connection with the ground, the surface holding you? So in this way, just a simple practice to call in some grounding. You can do it with a single breath, just one quick second here. All I have is a moment. Feel the ground beneath my feet. Feel my seat in the chair. Feel the earth holding me down beneath that. Breathing deeply down, slowing my pace with that breath just a little bit. You can do it with a single breath. You can expand it, taking 5 or 10 or 20 deep, slow breaths. You can set a timer for 20 minutes or 40 minutes if you want to go for it, and simply take those deep breaths down into self as you feel into that connection with the ground beneath you. A simple way, yet a powerful way to find your grounding. Finding your grounding. One of the most important things we can be doing now as we walk this path, wanting to become more deeply embodied, more present, centered, connected into all of that which matters in each moment. We begin with grounding. Because grounding takes us out of the chaos. There is so much chaos in our world right now, you guys, and it's intentional. The powers at play in this world are intentionally throwing chaos at all of us because they want us more fully ungrounded. They want us caught up in it all because they know that when we're caught up in it all, we become less empowered, we become less skillful. And when we're less empowered, we're less skillful, then it is so much easier for them to do what they want to do, which I can almost assure you is not in your best interest. Looking at what's happening, I promise you it is not in the interest of the planet. So grounding being step one. Anything you want to do in this world, any action you want to take, whether that's directed towards self or for the world we're part of, that you want to make better, that you want to heal, that you want to transform in a way that brings more light in. We start with grounding. Because this is how we feel supported. This is how we become connected to what matters. And it's from the space that we can then be discerning and we can take aligned action in a way that matters. But we don't get to take aligned action in a way that matters unless we can feel that grounding, unless we can be grounded, connected into self, connected into this whole world that we are all part of. This is what we're doing here. And you can do it so simply with this practice here. Now I'll invite you into a deeper practice later on in this episode. You also know, I hope you know at this point, guys, this is what I do, right? This is what I do. These grounding practices are the heart, the core of what I teach. So you can find them everywhere. Go get my Deep Roots meditation at upwardslopes.com/deeproots. Come join me in the upcoming circles that I'm just starting to announce. Grounding is what we do because it has to be the starting place to set the foundation so that we can move into everything else we're going to do. Again, that discernment, that aligned action, that healing, that regeneration, that transformation, everything that we do, we get to do it. But it begins here with grounding. So again, strong encouragement, get in this practice, do it as often as you can, and find ways to deepen into it. And maybe you deepen into it with a yoga practice. I teach a very grounding yoga practice. So maybe you find a yoga practice where the teacher is really guiding you into grounding, or maybe you take this with you into a yoga practice. So even if the teacher isn't cueing it, you yourself can do the whole practice, taking those deep breaths, feeling your mat beneath you, grounding in that way. Or maybe you're like where I was several years ago. And this is, I promised you I was going to tell you the story about how this all got started for me. And it started for me out on the trails. You all know I'm a ridiculous trail runner, right? I'm training for my third 100-miler, and it's wild. It's crazy. I think it's amazing. And it too begins with grounding, because you can't do things like go run 100 miles if you're disconnected from the earth and if you're disconnected from your body. If you're ungrounded, you are not going to make it 100 miles. You are going to stumble. You are going to fall. You're not going to eat or drink enough because you're not going to be in tune with what your body needs, and you're not going to be in tune with the terrain. So a few years ago, I was training for my first 100-miler. Again, wild, crazy, very fiery thing to do. Something you can only do if you're deeply grounded. Now, the thing is, as I was training for this first 100-miler, I was in these just terrible times in my life. Like, it was post-pandemic. My life as I had known it had completely fallen away. I had intentionally torn much of it down because I recognized how toxic or out of alignment it was. And then as I started, waking up to how out of alignment that it was and taking steps away from it, it was, one of those situations where everything else just starts to fall away. And it was post-pandemic, so the world was a shit show. And my life, my world, my experience, my embodied experience of reality was one of fire. I was caught up in crippling anxiety all the time. It was the time I was having my panic attacks. Talk about deeply ungrounded. And I'd found myself in these yoga teacher trainings, right? Because when you're having issues like that, everybody's advice is like, oh, you should go to yoga, And because I am so fiery, I didn't just want to go to yoga. I wanted to learn yoga. I wanted to become a yoga teacher so I could, I hate this word master, but, sort of like master these principles and practices. So I was doing this. I found my way to a yoga teacher training and another yoga teacher training and a yoga therapy training. And I was so deeply immersed in yoga. And I was learning so much about these yogic principles, one, having so much to do with grounding and balancing out all these different elements. So here when we talk about grounding, we're talking about an earthy element. So I was learning about all these principles and about how we need to balance them. And I recognized how deeply out of balance I was, that I had what I would call a pitta imbalance. I was way too fiery, a vata imbalance. So I was way too airy, right? So that airy, fiery, and kind of embody that like fiery tornado, being caught up in that fiery tornado. That's how I lived. That was my experience. And obviously I needed more grounding and more water for that matter, right? Those grounding, watery elements, which are feminine elements, by the way. So another way we can speak to this is I was deeply out of balance in a masculine way. So this fire and air being masculine elements, this earth and water being feminine elements. And I'm speaking so deeply to this now because I recognize that most everybody in this world is to some degree imbalanced in this way because we live in patriarchy, right? And I know that word is kind of triggery, activating, and brings a whole lot of things. But in this way, when I speak to patriarchy, it's a masculine imbalance. And one of the manifestations of that is we live in a fiery, airy world. It keeps us out of our bodies, up in our heads, always thinking forward, always moving forward, right? Does this resonate with your life? Yeah? Does this resonate with the world? This forward thinking, this how we have to move forward, right? Think about this country I live in and our desperate clinging to progress. We have to make progress. We have to move forward, moving forward. But the way we do that is so heady, right? It's all about computers, technology, about using your brain, your head, being oh so smart, intelligent, It was very heady, airy, fiery qualities. And it's an imbalance issue, right? It's not to speak to that these are bad qualities, but it's to speak to how they are out of balance. So we live in a world that is imbalanced, pushing too far in these masculine qualities. What we need is to bring in that feminine. So again, that earth element, that watery element. But for now, we're going to focus on earth. All right, we're talking about grounding here. So here I am in my own fiery tornado of an existence. And I find myself during a time we had a terrible fire season. So literally the forest all around me here in northern New Mexico was on fire all the time. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. So I could feel inside, so internally, my own embodied experience of this world, this fiery tornado. I could literally look around at my environment and I would be in all these burnt, dried out landscapes. I could look in the distance and see plumes of smoke just taking up more and more forest. It was terrible. It was a time of deep fear and uncertainty. And I find myself in all these yoga trainings, again, learning so much, so much, and also completely incapable of actually doing yoga. So it's this wild thing, right? Where one yoga class after the next, one training after the next, I'm showing up doing all I can and deeply frustrated because I can't actually get myself to do yoga. It's like every time I step on the mat and I try to feel my feet beneath me and I try to move and breathe in connection with my body, it's like the fire within me amplifies. So my attempt to slow down and my attempt to connect and ground, things actually get worse. The anxiety gets worse. Sometimes I'm triggered and go into a complete panic attack, and it's this terrible experience. And me being the fiery person that I am, I'm determined to figure this out, right? What is going wrong? Because I'm trying so hard. But every sort of traditional technique that I'm being taught isn't working, and much of it is actually making things worse. But what's happening? What's happening at the same time is I'm training for a 100-miler. And I'm training for a 100-miler because I'm a fiery person and I like to set big goals for myself and do big things. And I also love nature. And so I kind of come up with this plan. I'm going to train for this insane race. And what that's going to do is it's going to get me outside all the time. So I'm going to have to be training so often for this race, which means I'm going to need to be outside, running, hiking, walking, whatever I need to do, but being outside in connection into the earth. And I know that this is the space that I feel most alive. And so if I can sort of trick myself, like I have to be outside training for more hours today. So really I can just be outside, moving my body in connection to the earth. And also maybe, show up at a starting line to go do something wild and achieve this great big goal of mine. But what ends up happening, my own unique sort of creative way, just following those breadcrumbs. Like I know that when I'm outside with my feet on the earth, this is when I can actually feel okay. I know there's all these teachers and all these people telling me like I should be able to find this on the yoga mat, but my reality is I can't. The reality is I get on the yoga mat and it is a battle for me to do the simplest of things. But a 15-mile trail run, me outside for hours, moving and breathing in connection to the earth, out there, wow, there is where I actually feel okay. And as I'm learning more about this, I remember there's this one trail run, and I remember exactly where it was. It was right along the Rio Grande. There's this big canyon carved out by the Rio Grande, down at some of the lower elevations, kind of dropping out away from most of the ponderosas out of the mountains into the high desert. And the Rio Grande cuts this big canyon through my backyard. And I'm out there running along these desert trails, and the dirt is as dry as can be because we haven't had rain in God knows how long, but I'm running alongside the pinon and the juniper and the chamisa and the prickly pear cactus. And I'm out there running along, and, the world is a total shit show. There's fires burning all around me. My world is in flame. I don't even know what my life is anymore. And I'm running along, and all of a sudden I feel it. I feel my feet in connection to the earth. And I'm running along, and I feel one foot, and then the next, and then the next. I feel each step firmly rooted down in connection to the soil, in connection to the sand, in connection to the dirt. I'm running along, taking each step. And as I feel each step in connection to the earth, I notice that my breath goes a little bit deeper. And as each breath goes a little bit deeper, I start to find that feeling, that sensation, that knowing in my body. And as I find it, my breath goes even a little bit deeper. And as I take each step, moving along the earth in this way, I finally experience it, that state of grounding. Oh my gosh, there it is. I am held. I am supported. I am okay. And as I'm held, as I'm supported, I'm okay. And as I'm okay, oh, I can deepen in a little bit deeper into self. I can be a little bit more present in self. And as I'm a little bit more present, oh, I can start to actually feel all those things that are here. So in a first moment, of realization that this is what I was doing, this is why I had to be outside running, is because this was the only space that I could feel the grounding that I needed. And as this was the only space that I could find the grounding that I needed, I found myself in the only state where I could really deepen into presence. I could be present. I could be present. So unlike my attempts at meditation or yoga, where I was there intentionally to heal what I needed to heal from, to transform into the person I wanted to become, I couldn't do it in those places, at least not then. I certainly do these days as I've come a long way on my journey. But back then, I wasn't in a place, it wasn't aligned for me to find that on the yoga mat. I had to find it out on the trails. And for me, my own wild story, that was me training for a 100-miler. But of course, that's not what I'm going to encourage anyone else to do. What I'm going to encourage is to find the ways that you feel grounded and to make sure you do whatever you need to do so that you regularly show up for yourself. So signing up for events, it doesn't have to be a 100-miler. I've got a 50K coming up. It doesn't matter. For me, it's signing up for events where, that fiery aspect of myself that wants to go race and achieve, right? I know that I'm like this, and I know that I get a lot out of having those experiences. And I know that it's kind of a trick for me to show up to do what I might call the more important work that I know I need to do. Get outside. Oh, but I don't want to today. Oh, but I have to go train, so I'm going to get myself outside. I'm going to find my feet in connection to the earth. I'm going to breathe freely as I move my body, and this is how I deepen into connection with self. I'm out there, I'm moving through the ponderosas, those that are living, those that take their skeleton form out on the burn scar, or maybe I'm down in the desert, down near the Rio Grande, running in that train. It doesn't matter. The fact is I'm outside, moving and breathing, in connection to self, in connection to the earth. But maybe your thing is yoga, and maybe you need to go sign up for a yoga class because when you get on the yoga mat, that's where you deepen into your grounding. So you need to do something like go buy a punch pass so that you routinely show up for a yoga class. Whatever it is for you, the list is endless. Get creative or else take a very traditional route. It doesn't matter. Find the spaces where you are grounded, where you feel that support, that connection into self. Okay, so now that we've had a little bit of practice, you've heard my wild story. You've heard my wild story, and you kind of gathered what I'm getting at in a way that hasn't yet led you to press pause or end this episode. You're still with me. You're still with me. You're on board. We're finding our grounding. We're deepening into this grounding. We're doing it in whatever way aligns with each of us. For me, I have a trail run I'm going to do after this today. And then I'm going to go do some yoga. So I'm actually going to do both. And for me, where I'm at these days is trail running, being out on the earth, grounds me to a certain degree in a certain way. Then I like to come home and I like to deepen that grounding, really slow down the pace, come back fully into center, stretch out my body as I feel my mat beneath me. And that practice for me today is deeply grounding in a way that trail running or hiking isn't. A lot of similar qualities, but they have their unique flavor. But again, that's me. What works for you? What works for you? So I'm going to leave us here today with a practice of a different flavor. This one will be a guided meditation. So a way that you can find your grounding, deepen into grounding by sitting silently, comfortably, eyes closed if you're able, if not, having a soft gaze. So coming into this practice when you have a chance to be in a quiet space where you won't be interrupted, because we are going to go deep. And I want you to have the opportunity to go deep here. So if you need to press pause and come back later, please do that. Just make sure you do come back later so that you can get the benefits of this practice. For this practice, we are going to go deep. We're going to go deep, deep down into our own root in connection to the earth and down into the earth herself. And we are going to be guided down into the earth to find this deeper state of grounding. Before going into this practice, you can start to get settled, start to deepen in as I speak a few words to preface this practice. When we connect down into the earth this way, right? When we bring our consciousness down into the earth, there's different ways we can do this. And I think we've been raised in our Western worlds to sort of do any practice that offers healing with a very sort of, what should I call this? Self-focused, self-interested perspective. And this practice is here to help you. This practice is here to support you in your healing, your transformation. But if we come into grounding with this perspective that this is about each of our own individual selves and that we're going to do what we need to do to heal ourselves because we've got to move on with life and, get to the next thing, or if we have any sort of perspective that this is just about self and healing self as efficiently and effective as possible, you aren't going to find what you actually need in this practice. You're going to waste your time. And you might also deepen a rift that is already way too big in this world. So what I want to offer you instead is a perspective about collective healing, about healing in connection to the whole web of life. So when we talk about grounding, what we're doing is connecting to that which is, shall we call, bigger, greater, more expanded than just self, right? We are here as our own sovereign individual selves in these bodies that we are seated on the ground we sit upon. And we are living in connection to all of life, the whole of web of life that is this planet Earth. And when we talk about grounding, what we're doing is we're talking about connecting into that greater web. And if at any point you're sitting here connecting into this greater web because you want something for yourself and you do not have a care for the greater web, well, then again, this rift exists. there's a disconnect, there's a separation. And it's one that is already too big in our world. Because of it, so much harm is caused. So anytime I do a grounding practice, anytime we talk about connection with the earth, we have to enter in this from a heart-centered space. When we enter into an experience from a heart-centered space, right, your heart houses this grand intelligence. Yes, we can talk forever about how so smart and intelligent your brain is, and we can have those conversations. I'm classically trained as a neuroscientist. Let's talk about how amazing your brain is. Oh, but right now, can we talk about how intelligent your heart is? But your heart is intelligent in a different way. Your heart is intelligent in a way that is innately connected into this web of life. It is connected into the beings that are around you, all of life, this whole web of life on planet Earth. Your heart is innately connected into it in a way that your brain just isn't. And with this intelligence of your heart, right, if we move through your heart, what is going to happen is that you are innately connected into the whole web of life. So this is a gateway, sort of a path to enter into a practice where we know the interconnectedness of it all. And you can't enter fully egoically, right? These are my needs and this is what I want. This is what I intend to get out of it for me, myself, in a very egoic way. If we're going through the heart, yes, you can cling to your ego. Your ego can absolutely be present, right? This is a spectrum. But we're also talking about a learning process here. We're talking about a process where we've been taught, programmed to live in a very egoic, self-centered way, and we've been taught to actively disconnect from heart. So it's a process to go in the other direction, to become heart-centered, to learn a skillful relationship with our ego. Yes, fulfill some of those ego wants. My ego, I want to go race a 100-miler this year. And yeah, there's ego involved there. But when I asked myself, deep questioning on whether or not I signed up for this race this year, I was sitting in my heart space. And in my heart space, grounded and connected into the whole web of life, I was asking, is this egoic want in alignment with what serves more of the web of life and me and my wholeness? And the wild answer I get is yes. Because this egoic want of mine is connected into a bigger picture where I am being served in so many ways. So again, another silly, kind of quirky example, but I'm hoping it hits home to get to the point that's we have our wants, and that want can be heart aligned. And if it's heart aligned, then there's a good bet that it's aligned with the greater web of life. So anyway, just some conversation to speak to what I'm going to guide us to in this practice. Before we even start to ground, before we even start to deepen down into self or into the earth, what I actually want to do here to begin, as you're feeling your seat in connection to the surface holding you, feeling down into that physical connection with the physical surface holding you. Feeling the sensations, reminding you of the ground holding you in this moment. Can you also breathe into heart now? So breathing into heart. Dropping your attention, your awareness down into your heart, breathing into your heart, filling your heart. Filling your heart so simply with your consciousness. And you know, right? You know where we're going. We're going into grounding. We're going into connection with earth. So maybe here as you fill your heart up, as you bring your consciousness to your heart, maybe you bring in some gratitude or some other flavor of love for this earth that houses you, that supports you, that takes care of you, that brings you all of the food you eat. Everything that nourishes you, that supports you is of this earth. How much does this earth do for you? Sitting in that space, can maybe allow your heart to fill with love, with devotion, with gratitude, whatever flavor of love resonates for you. Simply allowing yourself to fill your heart. And with the heart full of love for this earth, from this space, now dropping your attention down into the earth. And feeling your feet, your seeing connection to the earth, your root, breathing down into that physical connection with the surface, holding you here. From here, continuing to drop down even further. Maybe you bring to mind dirt, rocks, roots, soil as you bring your awareness down into the earth beneath you. What is here? What is here in the ground beneath you? This ground holding you here in this moment. What is here? And as you continue to breathe deep into this space, maybe you bring a little bit of awareness back into your heart. What does your heart want to do? Does your heart want to open up? Maybe there's a little trap door in the base of your heart, and this love for the earth pours down through, pouring down through your belly, through your root, down into the earth. Do you have love for this earth? How much love do you have for this earth? Do you want to give her this love, your gift to her? Continuing to breathe down into the earth beneath you. Continuing to breathe down into the earth beneath you. What is here? Are there roots? Are there rocks? How's the soil? Is it rich soil? Is there water down here? Are there nutrients down here? What is here down in this earth for you, to offer you support, to offer you nourishment? What is here down in this earth for you? There is so much here. What is there for you today? Maybe you find that support you need. Maybe you find that nourishment, that life force that you need. What is here for you? What is here for you today? Continuing to breathe down into the earth. And if you want to stay here longer, you're welcome to press that pause button. Hang out. Maybe explore a little bit. But for now, I'm going to start to close our practice in that heart full of gratitude. As you start to rise back up, rising back up through the dirt, the rock, the roots, back up into your own root, feeling that connection with the surface holding you. Coming back up into your belly, your chest, feeling into your body. Breathing fully into your whole body. Breathing fully into your whole body. Maybe you bring in just a little bit of basic movement as you feel fully into your whole body. And as your heel or your And as you're here feeling into your whole body, just once again checking in with the earth beneath you, feeling that support, knowing that support is always here, knowing that you can return to this practice to deepen in whenever you want to, but knowing that this support is always here. So no matter what you're doing in life, you're at work or you're at play, you're reading a book, you're taking care of a child, you're cooking dinner, whatever you're doing, the support is always here. You're reading the news, you're scrolling through social media, you're having a triggered conversation with a friend or family member. The earth is always here holding you. And at any moment, so quick, you can tune back in. Because this earth is always here, always offering you that support, that nourishment, that grounding. Just giving yourself some time to come out of this practice. Finding yourself in the room that you're in, preparing to go. Connect with the world, be in the world that awaits for you here. Feeling more grounded. If you have a curiosity or want to connect in more deeply, find more grounding practices or, learn more like what's next? What comes next after I'm deepening into this grounded state? Okay, I'm feeling grounded. I'm feeling more embodied. What now? What now? That's what we're all about over here. So make sure on my newsletter, upwardslopes.com. Again, upwardslopes.com/deeproots will get you a similar meditation. You can enter back into this playground in a different meditation. And I've got circles coming, you guys. This spring, my earth embodiment circles are being opened up to the public. I've kept them behind closed doors in a select group of people for the last year. The magic that is coming through there, all the amazing things I'm hearing from the participants. I'm at a point that it's time to expand this, and I'm so excited to expand it to you all. So make sure on the newsletter so you're the first to hear about that. Alrighty, guys. I'm going to go on that trail run of mine and then return to the yoga mat. But my own state of grounding and also joy, excitement, peace, all the good things as I enjoy life. Train for this next 100-miler coming up. Oh, this wild life. Alrighty, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in today, and I look forward to catching you next time.